Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames, where Nick and I are going to discuss the rest of the December schedule, the athletic article, and our ideas of, do the Flames really need a captain? Who could it be? Who can fill Gio's shoes? And of course, why routine matters here on Locked On Flames.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. You have me, Jess Belmosto, here, along with Nick Zararis, for our weekly crossover duo episode. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm very much looking forward to the weekend. Everybody who's listening can relate. The week leading up to Christmas and then the week between Christmas and New Year's Eve. Quite the struggle for productivity.
Oh, 100%. And, just to keep everyone busy while they're listening, you should make sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. It is a free gift for you and for us here at Locked On Flames. But last night was a pretty good win, and we're not going to drone on and on about it because Sharks were bad, Flames were okay. But let's talk about what there's left to look forward to for the remainder of December. And, talked a little bit about it on Monday in terms of really needing all 12 of these points because they need to catch up and pick up the slack.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the benefit of having this division crunch of all of these games against teams you're directly in competition with. You're going to have a real good idea of where you are. I mean, Daryl, for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now, has been saying the goal is to be in one of the playoff spots by Christmas. He's got till Sunday. They have 2 games between now and them. The opportunity's right there in front of them. They're going to play, I have it written down here. They're going to play the Kings and then the Ducks. The Kings are in a playoff spot right now. The Ducks are the worst team in the NHL. Ideally, you would like a split there. You get one of those two. You go into the Christmas break, the 4 days off, feeling pretty good about yourself, your team. The Flames kind of have had a hard time finding any kind of consistency this season. So all of these games against divisional opponents, and then after Christmas break, they see the Oilers, they see Seattle. So these games are all very important because of how bunched up the Pacific is. You've got 4 or 5 teams all within 4 standing points of each other, and you have Colorado in there for good measure, who's not in a playoff spot in their division. They're one of the wild cards. Mm-hmm. So it's very early. We're not even at the 40-game mark for the Flames, but they need to do a good job here in these division games because these matter a lot more. Yes, I know, I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was, I forget what publication had it, but had a strength of schedule analysis for the rest of season. And yeah, the Flames have the softest schedule the rest of the way. That's great.
Then there's no excuse.
Yes, that's part of it. That's part of it. Yes, just big picture wise, there are no excuses. You have an opportunity here to make up ground. You have the inverse of the Devils, where the Devils went on that crazy heater with a really soft schedule to open the gate. You've struggled a little bit out of the gate. You've had some difficult games. Now, division games, your coach is saying we want to be in a playoff spot by the end of the weekend. You know what you need to do. It's a matter of doing it now.
Right. And, last year it was a little bit different because they had the opportunity or potential to fall to a wild card spot if they didn't keep up the good hockey that they were playing, and they would have had to go play Colorado. And we all saw how that ended for every one of their opponents. But now they're looking to just sneak in there, kind of make up for lost ground. And the beauty of it is that there's still plenty of hockey to be played. And I don't think that we necessarily have to jump the gun and say, oh my God, is this team even going to make the playoffs? Can they make the playoffs? Will this be any sort of, compensation for the summer? Are we going to be able to look back at July and by the end of the season and say, we really won. And it's a good time to just sneak in there. And even if it's the bare minimum, at least you did it.
One of the natural things is you look at your benchmark points along in a season, you take stock. You do this naturally in your life too. Everybody's going to start getting ready to do their New Year's resolutions, what they want to stick to, if they're going to be able to stick to it. It's the same idea here for the Flames. They have every opportunity in front of them to make up for the early season struggles. And let's be frank here, struggles. They at one point lost 7 games in a row. They've had a couple of rough losing streaks this season.
Yeah.
These games against your divisional opponents are more or less 2-for-1s. Like the games you have against the bad teams, like you still have dates with Columbus, with the Flyers, etc. That's great and all. You got to beat the bad teams, but these division games are so important because you got to keep pace. And it's effectively a 4-point game because if you lose to your opponent, they're gaining 2 points on you in the standings while you lost the opportunity to gain 2 points. It's a 4-point swing. That's really important when you're this bunched up. And it seems like, and this might be anecdotal, just me, but it really feels like there's like 4 really good NHL teams. Then there's like 12 to 15 really average teams.
Yeah.
And then there's 10 god-awful teams. And that's really the league right now. And that's why the standings are so bunched up. Like even the Predators, who have been largely boring this year, are 14-3 and are 4 points back of a playoff spot, even though they haven't really played well at all. There's plenty of opportunity here.
Good. That looks so bad for the league. Like if a casual fan or, someone else that follows sports, like just not a hockey fan, whatever, and they see that record and they're like, how does a team like this with that record, how are they in playoff contention right now? Like,
it's early. That's the biggest thing. It's early. That's why. Usually water will find its level. Like I've talked about more than once on the show. Yep. The Ducks were in a playoff spot at Christmas last year. Obviously, that didn't carry over into the rest of that season or into this season. They've had some injuries, different kind of circumstances for them. But it's still early. And definitely everybody does the American Thanksgiving stat. 20% of the teams that are in playoff spots don't. That's the counterpoint to that. Like, sure, big picture, yeah, but outliers. There's plenty of time here, and the teams the Flames are in direct competition with are also flawed. Like the Flames are a flawed team, so it really will be over the next 35 to 40. I think it's 47 games they have left to play, something like that. They're going to define the season. You're going to see, and for the Flames, it's a real sliding doors kind of situation.
Yeah, and like you said, they kind of catch a break here with the Christmas break coming up, but also with their opponents. Yes. It's like they really need this cushion, and something tells me that, when the season's over, we're going to more than likely look back at this and say this was really their saving grace. This was their moment to turn it around. Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers, toes, legs, everything crossed.
Knocking on my desk.
Yeah, we're not jinxing anything. But, hopefully we'll look back and say, this was their cushion. This is what pushed them and kind of gave them that playoff leverage.
That's the thing. It's a golden opportunity. Some teams aren't that fortunate. Like everybody remembers how the Canucks went on that crazy run once they hired Bruce Boudreau last year, but they ran out of games to make up the deficit. There weren't enough games in the schedule. If the season went another 5-10 games, the pace the Canucks were playing at, they would have made the playoffs. But eventually, that very long season that we keep talking about, how there's plenty of time, really quickly, we're going to be at the trade deadline. That sounds crazy to say about something that's 3 months away. The deadline, I think, is March 2nd or 3rd this year. That's 3 full months. That's 3 full months away. It's going to go very fast. It is going to go very fast.
Yeah, I was looking at when the All-Star break was this year because I was like, oh, it's definitely like sometime in January. It is February 4th, and that will also be here before we know it. And I feel like we'll blink and we'll be the All-Star break or All-Star game, and then we'll blink again. It'll be the trade deadline, and I think that's going to be an interesting time for the Flames as well because it's back to the never-ending conversation of, do they need a top 6 forward or do they need another veteran defenseman? But I think we're going to move on from this. And of course, the other age-old question, do the Flames need a captain? Because we have been talking about this since we knew Gio was more than likely going to be drafted by Seattle. But first, let me tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all of your sports betting info, stats, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. The World Cup is over, but they've still got you covered for hockey, and they have it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, which obviously you do, you're listening here, so head on over to BetOnline next and tune in to some of their podcasts as well. Maybe place some bets on, is Bill Belichick going to scratch Mac Jones and who Zach Wilson will date next? I don't know. But head on over to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more. And that's BetOnline, where the game starts.
It's bowl season. This is the best time for getting nothing done. There is college football on every day from 11 a.m. to 3 o'clock. This is the perfect time. Have a little bit of fun. Throw $5 on something. Have something to root for. There's NFL football on Christmas, so if you really are bored and you really are avoiding spending time with your family because certain topics have come up at the table, throw $5 on the Packers. Root for Aaron Rodgers. Don't root for Aaron Rodgers' ideas and beliefs.
Seriously,
lots to discuss.
Yeah, no, add a little sparkle to your Christmas with some money on the line. Would you put money on the line of the Flames naming a captain while Daryl Sutter is coach?
Probably not. I mean, he's been here 2.5 seasons now. I mean, about half of the season for that 56-game season, maybe 20-something games, whatever. If he identified somebody he felt capable of being the captain, I think he would have done it by now. That's just realistically how this works. I mean, I don't think you need a captain to be a successful NHL team. I think largely a captain is a figurehead, is more symbolic than anything, because for the most part, it's about for the public. In that article in The Athletic from the other day, the fan poll, Mikael Backlund won the fan poll by a lot, and the journalist who interviewed a couple different people on the Flames, like, it doesn't really matter to us, to be honest with you. I've been on teams where there were guys who wore the C who probably shouldn't have. There were guys on teams where we could have had 7 or 8 different guys worthy of wearing the C. It really depends. Locker room to locker room. And that's the part that kind of gets overlooked. Everybody just assumes because that's tradition. That's what you've always had in the NHL. You need to maintain that. You need to have a captain, whatever. I think you shouldn't stick to that one-size-fits-all mentality. Every locker room is different. Every group of people is different. Whatever that group feels is best for them, that to me is where I am on captain, no matter what. And I say that as somebody whose favorite team named somebody who I'm not a particular fan of their game, who kind of is, I don't want to use the word cringe because that's probably not the exact right word, but like, if you're like throwing temper tantrums, like, a kid in the toy aisle at Target because you didn't get what you wanted for Christmas,
it's like painful.
Like, bro, you're a grown man. Use your words. If you can't impact the game by, making a hockey play, you got to throw a helmet. You got to have a fit. At some point, you got to say, well, I'm 27 years old. Maybe throwing things I should have left when I was, in middle school.
Right. Yeah, no, I remember messaging you and being like, well, why wasn't this person named it instead? And you were like, for image.
Yes.
It's just.
That's another part of it. Yeah. The process is, some of it is a marketing thing because if you name a player who's not one of your like marquee players as captain, all the retail stores will carry that guy's jersey now. That is a little part of this. That's a little part that not a lot of people think about, but that's something that, as neurotic as I am about jerseys, I actively think about. Like, what jerseys do you see at a Dick's Sporting Goods or at Modell's doesn't exist anymore, but stores of that ilk. Stores of that ilk. Yeah.
But Yeah, no, you're right. And I think a lot of it does come down to the room and the vibe. And
Yes.
like I think of, unfortunately, Gio kind of split the room after apparently calling out Matthew Tkachuk's behavior and just kind of being like, don't do that. And everyone was like, well, he can. He's Matthew Tkachuk. And, I think it does come down to, this team has so many veteran players on it that could be captains. And you hear Daryl Sutter say, well, if Sean Monahan was still on this team, he'd be captain. Or if this player was on a different team, they would be a captain. Maybe it's not right now for the Flames to name one. And that's okay because, again, I feel like naming one right now is just for this sort of image. It's not something that has to be done. And there's so many different voices in the room and within this, leadership group that no one is above another person just because they have the C or the A. It's just you're a voice in the room where you want to be heard.
And this is a theory I've always had. People like having a captain so they can point the finger at them and blame them for when things go wrong. Just generally speaking, it's very easy when you have like a defined person to put all of your effort and rage towards when you have a figurehead like that. For fans, at least, they like having somebody they can be like, well, he's the captain of the team. How come he isn't stopping this? How come he isn't turning things around? Everybody likes
one person.
Yes, correct. Everybody likes to project. That's the thing. Everybody likes to project onto the parasocial relationships they have where it's, oh, this guy's been around the league for a long time. He's been on a couple different teams. He knows what it takes to win because he's won in other places. Just because he won in other places doesn't mean he's going to be able to win here. He is not playing with the same people he played with. These are 17 different skaters and 2 different goalies. It's a very different environment. Sure, you can be a good guy everywhere you go. Doesn't necessarily you're always going to fit in the same role. You're not going to be able to have that same dynamic everywhere you go because every team is different because every team has different people on it.
Right. And, I don't think someone is going to come from another team and just kind of insert themselves and be like, this is my locker room now. Like, that's not what a real leader would do anyways. I feel like, you just kind of sit back, feel it out, and then kind of start dipping your toes in. And, I think one of my favorite things is, when the refs, something happens, Jonathan Huberdeau or Backlund are right there with the ref talking. And that's, to me, that is leadership. And that is something that a captain typically does. But those are the ones that step up to do it. And again, initiative for the ice, the thing that you do while you're on the ice, and also when you need to really be a leader. And they're doing that. But again, you don't have to wear a C. There is just a level playing field there.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Where are you at in terms of what type of player your captain should be? Because this was a real argument amongst Ranger fans over the summer because most people were looking around at each other and were like, Trouba's like the 9th best player on this team.
Yeah.
And when you look at the teams that have won the Stanley Cup in the last 10 years or so, the captain's usually one of the 2 or 3, even 4th best player on the team. The only outlier there really is Dustin Brown with the Kings. That's the only one in the last 10 years where he wasn't a consensus top 3 or 4 player on the team of everybody won the cup. You think about Ovechkin, Crosby, Taves. You think about Bergeron. Well, no, Chara was the captain. Then Chara was one of the better. Chara was one of the best players on that team. You think about Stamkos, the year he was on the team, not the one year where he only played the one shift. Definitely one of the best players on the team. The year before that, no, he wasn't, but he was hurt. So, but you get what I'm saying here. Where are you at in terms of that?
I don't think that your captain has to be the best player, but I think there's someone that still needs to probably fall 5 to 7 at least, and go out there and they have to make some sort of impact on the ice. I don't, and by impact I mean a positive impact. And Jacob Trouba does not do that. Sorry, Flames fans, we've got to talk Rangers for a second, but when I saw that they named him captain right after injuring Sidney Crosby, who's one of the greatest hockey players of all time, I was like, what message are we sending? Because to me, Kreider is the captain. That's the guy. But again, I am not the front office. I am not an owner. I am someone who simply observes the Rangers when they're on my television. But yeah, no, I think a captain needs to be someone that goes out there and makes a positive impact through hockey plays. And again, and is someone just kind of checking in with their players off the ice. Patrice Bergeron, I don't even think he was captain at this point, but when Jamel Smith was waived from Boston to Providence, Bergeron called him and was like, hey, I'm sure that this is a really hard time for you mentally. Like, if you need anything, like, here's obviously my phone number, but like, call me. I don't care what time of night it is. Like, we're here for you. My wife and I, like, we'll do whatever we have to do, like, to support you. To me, that's also like,
there's an emotional part of being a leader too, where you have to have a firm grasp on how everyone is doing. You can't lead everybody the same way. Like we were just talking about, where you can't fit in the same way on every team. You can't lead with everybody the same way.
Yeah. And it's not a cookie cutter role, and not every team requires the same intensity of a leadership. Like when I think of the Canadians, for example, they need that heartbeat of the team. And that is Nick Suzuki. That's perfectly him. He's a young kid, future of the organization, and just he is him. He is him. And then, again, to bring it back to Boston, you have Bergeron, who's been there his entire career. He's won. He is one of the best two-way forwards in the history of the league. And he's so well poised. And just not Jacob Trouba. He goes out there. He's so elegant. And he does his job.
So the last thing I want to say about this is, and that's why we're giving all of these anecdotes in this context, because you don't need a captain to be a successful NHL team. That's the main reason here. And naming someone captain for the sake of naming someone captain defeats the entire purpose of having a captain.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you don't rush to name someone captain. Usually it's someone who's kind of been groomed to be the captain, or, again, like Bergeron was under Chara. And that's just something that happens naturally.
Yes.
You're not going to do it because you want to, or you have
Leadership takes time to develop.
Yeah. And that's okay too, because it's even more exciting and more special when that time comes. But I think we're going to wrap it up today with some wonderful, wonderful consistency talk, which I feel like, again, sometimes it may feel like we're back in 2020, 2021 with the shortened season, because that's all we talked about that season. But we are going to just break it down, talk about consistencies, inconsistencies, traps, and of course, Daryl Sutter. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locked On Flames. Almost forgot the name of the podcast here. It's fine. But thanks for hanging out with us. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto, and you can follow Nick at Nick Zararis. Oh, man. So, the Flames. Like, there was an interesting thread over the weekend that I actually talked about on the show on Monday. And I want to get your feel for this. If Daryl Sutter was not named Daryl Sutter, would he be under fire in Calgary?
Yeah, probably, yeah. And it's why this topic is on the rundown over the weekend, because I think I read the same thread, probably, to be honest with you, because it's very straightforward. And even we were doing this. When I was on the show last week, I said, ultimately, I'm going to defer. I think I trust Daryl's instincts because he's been around for so long. And then I read that thread a little bit. I thought about it, and I think you can be a good coach, but not know how to coach the players you have because you're not suited for the style they like to play. And I kind of think that's the case with the Flames right now, is that I still think Daryl's a decent coach, but I think he's too rooted in his ways to kind of adapt a little bit to the new players he has, where he occasionally stumbles into good combinations and then he keeps consistently changing them after one bad period, one bad turnover, etc. I mean, Lucic went from being healthy scratch 3 straight games to playing 14 minutes in the top 6 in a game the Flames lost by multiple goals. I understand he's kind of just trying to throw things at the wall right now to see what can stick. But at the same time, you gotta find a way to get the best out of your guys, and they're not doing that. That's the reason I think you can make the argument that Daryl should be getting a little bit more heat, is he's not putting his guys in a position to succeed right now. Like, yeah, they can bully the Sharks. That's great. I mean, the Sharks are probably the second worst team in the entire league. If they're going to make the run he wants them to here and get into a playoff spot relatively soon, he's going to need to be better too.
Right. And I think we were all so excited when the Kadri signing happened because we were like, this is a perfect guy. This is a Sutter, system-made guy. And not that I feel like Kadri has been underperforming. He is tied with Toffoli for the most goals. But I feel like, again, he could be used in a different way and pushed to that next level. And which is very odd to say with Daryl Sutter at the helm, because these were quite literally the same exact talking points I had about Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Mangiapane, and Dubé when Jeff Ward was running this team. And Dylan Dubé has been playing fantastic hockey. I feel like Mangiapane may be seeing some regression, and the other two don't play for this team anymore. But there is something that just needs like a little push. The car is in neutral right now, and we have to get it into drive and just do something. And I don't know what.
So one of the things I try to think about when we have these type of intangible and like philosophy discussions, you try and remove yourself and you think about it in terms of the talking points. Should there be more heat on Daryl Sutter? Well, why should there be more heat on Daryl Sutter? Because he's not getting the most out of the team. Why is he not getting the most out of the team? The team's a little bit different than last year. They lost really, really, really good players. They've had to kind of reconfigure how they want to use their lineup. They're missing different players. And I think some of it is Daryl just getting a feel for the new guys who are playing significant roles. I mean, Mackenzie Weegar is playing a lot of minutes. He's got 2 new top 6 forwards. Those are your bulk minute guys. You think about it. Your first line's playing 18, 19 minutes a night. Your second line's playing 17, 16 minutes a night. Your first pair's playing 23, 24 minutes a night. Second pair's playing about 20 minutes a night. That's a significant portion of your game. And for him to not have a great feel for these newer players, these guys who are new to the team this year, that's part of this. And then the main reason I titled this section Stubbornness versus Experiences, in Daryl's life, he is where he is because of the experiences he's had.
Right.
He's going to defer that. I've always kind of known how to figure this out. I will figure it out again.
Yeah.
And that is life experience. You can't really get good at things until you have significant experience doing them. But at the same time, when you don't allow yourself to try new things or to buckle a little bit, to yield to the players, give them a little bit of freedom to be the players they are as opposed to the players you want them to be, that's where you can be perceived as stubborn. The stubbornness, the most obvious thing is how they've been using Lucic. I mean, it's great. He scored 2 goals last night, but Milan Lucic is not a second line, first line forward in 2022. He's just not. But that's a guy Daryl feels comfortable with, because Daryl's gotten this far in his life with the decisions he's made, he's going to think, well, if I've done this before, I think Lucic is similar to people I've had before. He's going to be successful doing this based on that experience.
Yeah, and I'm almost positive Lucic was still playing pretty okay when he was in LA under Sutter. So, he knows, like, it's the familiarity. And I feel like that is something very good to work with. But there's also like some younger, more efficient players that you had last year that you can use that you're still familiar with and can kind of move around and shuffle and not make this big tank of a man play in your top 6 at the end of 2022. One of the questions I have is, has there ever been a situation that you can think of off the top of your head where a player, or not even just a player, but a team has kind of been like, I know we're supposed to be doing this on the ice, but what if we tried this instead? Kind of rebelled against their coach?
Rebelled against their coach. I mean, the Flyers are going to have a full mutiny on the bounty soon, but that's hypothetical. Like, that's going to happen.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Coaches who've gotten fired. The end of Ducharme in Montreal was very much like that, where the guys were just going out there, going through the motions, doing what they wanted to do, and the coach ended up getting fired. When it goes bad in the NHL, it goes very bad. I mean, David Quinn at the end of his time with the Rangers, that's another example I could think of where David Quinn wanted them to do one thing and they were like, no. And that was the end of the 56-game season and his time in New York. So it happens, but it's not as extreme with the Flames. I think there's something to be said for the fact that, like we said at the start of this segment, new players playing significant roles.
Yeah.
Darryl doesn't have a feel for them yet, so he doesn't know how he wants to use them. So he's going to be inclined to defer to the players he's had. The one thing I will say about familiarity and experience, I'm glad he put Backlund back with Coleman and Mangiapane. That line has been very good when it's been together the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, that is one of my favorite lines to watch in hockey in general. I think that line is so special, and the planets have aligned for them to be together, and Daryl Sutter just needs to
leave that alone.
Do not touch it. When you are playing, your little Jenga or whatever, asking your magic 8-ball, who should be where, leave that line alone. Those 3 names are off limits. And that's it. That's it. Have fun. Have fun with the rest of it. I don't know how far you're going to get if you're trying to play Lucic 14, 15 minutes a night. I don't think that is something that is remotely sustainable. I think that it is time to kind of shuffle this lineup and allow Matthew Phillips to be elevated in the lineup. And just please give that poor boy a chance. Please.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's going to be a while till they can add another player because they need to keep accumulating cap space to the deadline. You've got in-house guys that are worth a dart throw. I mean, worst case, okay, he's not good enough or he's not ready. Okay. There's not much of a difference.
Right. There's 2 or 3 more names down in the AHL that could probably also go for a spin. So, again, just figure it out, please.
Be willing to try new things. I know you can't. I know you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but Daryl, please, I'm begging you, Daryl, to just, I don't know, have an epiphany one night. I know you can do it. I know these visions come to you in a fever. He's gonna have Johnny Gaudreau visit him in a dream and be like, "Play the Short King."
Exactly.
Like a Christmas Carol. I'm picturing Daryl walking through his house with a nightcap on with a candle.
A little candle.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely how he sleeps. I guarantee it. I just, oh my God, he trips over like the yellow lab that they have or something so generic, but I believe it. So I think that does it for us today here on Locked On Flames. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode, and it's good to kind of get to like the meat and potato discussions versus just okay, this is what they did well, this is what they did bad. We'll move on. It's okay. So thank you, Nick, for bringing all this good stuff to the table. And remember to follow us on Twitter at @LO_FlamesPod. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Mention the show at like Christmas dinner. Like when those conversations start bubbling over, be like, hey guys, on my favorite episode of my favorite podcast ever, they were talking about how Daryl Sutter like trips over his dog because he doesn't, Johnny Gaudreau comes to him in his sleep. So just, interject some fun facts about the podcast. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. Lots of nonsense going on there. And Nick, where can everyone find you?
Just my Twitter handle's my last name, Nick Zararis, Nick, Zararis. Same thing on TikTok, Instagram. I don't even know what my Instagram handle is. I made that in high school. Don't follow me on Instagram. Yeah, I never stopped talking ever.
You have two terminally, not even chronically, but terminally online hosts here with you at Locked On Flames. So enjoy. Have a good rest of the week. I'll be back tomorrow with, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
See you guys.